Joining me now is Professor Hassan Abbas. He's the author of Return of the Taliban, Afghanistan After the Americans Left, which just came out in April. Dr. Abbas is a distinguished professor of international relations at the National Defense University. He's also senior advisor at Harvard Center for International Affairs. Professor, good to see you. Thank you for joining us. I tried to give this as good a setup as we could. It's a complicated study that you've done here, but I guess the question that my viewers are most interested in is, why are these Taliban officials so threatened by your new book that they're urging supporters to kill you? People have been spilling ink about the Taliban for decades.
First, thank you very much. Honored to be with you, Ali. I think they're really concerned or scared because I have exposed their real image. They want to portray themselves as the pious, the real Islamic warriors who really know what Islamic Sharia is. And through profiles of so many of them, I've exposed and explained how in so many cases greedy for power they are, how much away from what I believe to be the true Islamic principles and values, how far they are from those, and how their internal divisions are so entrenched that it is all about power grab and it is all about dogmatism, what is at play. I think that's what primarily hits them, but also because I exposed their links with the Pakistani intelligence. And what they want to portray is that they succeeded, it was their victory alone. They don't want to share this with anyone. And those links and the hints that they are being manipulated at times by the Pakistani intelligence or military, that also was a severe hit to whatever image they want to build. I think these two things were at the core of it.
So as you, a professor of South Asian studies, are writing this book about the Taliban, a news event essentially, were you surprised that the impulses to both curtail and limit your book and then to threaten you, were you surprised at how much they have in common with some of the impulses that we've been talking about every week here in America, with people who feel that their position or power or narrative is threatened, want the literature about it banned?
Indeed. I mean, I was surprised, I may add, pleasantly surprised in a way, with Zabiullah Mujahid tweeting this to his 750K followers. This was a great marketing thing for my book also. I mean, it reached so many places where it could not have reached otherwise. So in that sense, in a lighter vein, that was a pleasant surprise. But I was also, this further convinced me that Taliban, at the end of the day, they are just focused more on this social media marketing, and this is what hits them the most. And even for mentioning what I did from their perspective, they said, I'm taking away their credit for their victory. So they want to be seen as very powerful, and that's the image they have built to their younger people. Also, some of their top leaders, I exposed for instance, in one case, the former head, Mullah Mansoor, who made about 24 trips to Middle East, to Gulf. He was into all kind of things that many others are, but no one was expecting a Taliban would go. People knew that he's into drug business, but no one perhaps knew that he was into alcohol, he was into womenizing, Russian prostitutes, etc. And that, I think, hit their image as well. In a way that really startled them. And they know these things inside. That's what was, I think, also explained to me, that they are more into building their narrative and image than interested about the real Islamic values, principles, pluralism, equality, freedom, rights, women rights, etc. Every major principle that they espouse or they project, on the ground, some of their hardliners and extremists stand exactly for the opposite.
So let's talk about your recommendation about engaging with some of the more moderate Taliban. You're not alone in this. The Economist recently published an editorial with the headline, "Time to engage," in parentheses, very carefully with the Taliban. The magazine notes that isolating the mullahs is not working. The West needs a more constructive approach, end quote. You're someone who's been following the Taliban for a very long time. Your position is still in the minority. Western governments do not feel that engaging with moderate Taliban is going to be substantially better than engaging with hardline Taliban. Why are you confident that the moderates could ultimately win if we engage?
there are two things in this, my pitch for engagement. One is we actually tried everything. Those who are saying we'll not engage, they are perhaps forgetting history. We were there for 20 years. We spent $1 trillion, more than that perhaps. We first called it nation building, which was a flawed way to project something. No one can build a nation. Yes, state building. We tried. We made major mistakes. We were learning in the process. But at the end of the day, Taliban are back because US and other allies also negotiated with Taliban. And this was a negotiated deal for peace. That's what enabled Taliban to be back there. Now, because we started this re-engagement already through those negotiations, these have to be taken to a logical conclusion. That's my main argument. Secondly, negotiations will most certainly, further negotiations and engagement, by that I mean not necessarily recognition, but this engagement, I'm convinced, will enable some of the pragmatic elements, some of these moderates. I'm using the word moderate very carefully, yes, because we know how this word is thrown at many of us in different settings. I am convinced that Kabul was not, we know that Kabul was not burned down by Taliban. When they went back to take over Kabul, if they had burned down, I would have said they want nothing to do with any Western institution. They are trying to adopt, they are trying to adapt, and they are trying to build on some of the institutions which are there in a very crude fashion. But those are the people, those cabinet ministers, they are PhDs among them. We say they are not kind of intrusive, but I know of two Hazara Shia Muslims who are part of the cabinet. We know about Tajiks. Yes, they are in minority, but they have been attempting. Another example I often give to people: unlike the Taliban won when they were in power, they were known for massacre of the Shia Hazaras. This time around, they were allowing some of the processions of the Shia Muslims. They were engaging with the Sufis. Today, the most important Sufi shrine in Kabul is being safeguarded by these smart gun-holding, smartly dressed gun-holding Taliban. So Taliban are wearing uniform, for example. That in itself is a big change. There are these graduation parades. So Taliban are, some of them in Kabul are modernizing. And those in Kandahar are bigoted. I have profiled the book of the Chief Justice of Taliban today, Hakim. Absolutely a book of bigotry and extremism and things that I cannot even say publicly. Such terrible things are being projected as Islamic principles. Those Kandahar-based religious clerics are a different world. I am saying we need to be more proactive, give some space to some of the Taliban who want to engage with others, because everything else was already tried. What are we going to lose? That's my main pitch.
Professor, thank you for joining us. We hope you stay safe. You don't seem to be deterred at all by the threats against you or your life. You seem to be very engaged in this continuing and important conversation, both for Afghanistan and for us in America, because of the amount of investment that we have put into that country. Professor Hassan Abbas is the author of today's Velshi-Band Book Club feature, The Return of the Taliban, Afghanistan After the Americans Left.